All right, so we have a file to download today. Today we're looking at working with charts. So come to Halloween here in the Learning Suite and download Census Fall 17. Must have just uploaded the one from Fall of 17. It looks like a pretty good file. So this is where we left off like a year ago on that example, but it's probably about the same place that we left off when we did it ourselves. Go ahead and get that open. And it should look familiar once it gets here. Enable macros, that looks wonderful. So this is the one where we had all that county level data, and we were trying to figure out a way to be able to compare the data. So we gave ourselves a drop-down box, you pick the county, and it should add a new county in to be able to make the comparisons. Okay, so what we'd like to do next is, so any questions? We kind of remember this example and we're ready to pick up and go forward? Download it okay? So here's what I'd like to do. I would like to make it so that we can actually build a graph of these things. Now, this is a lot of things to graph, so I don't want to graph everything, but I'd like to be able to allow the user to choose a particular row and then maybe press a button that says build graph and have it just build a graph for whichever of the counties they have listed right here. Well, that's the idea. So I'm just going to go ahead and build a graph first, and then we'll record ourselves building the graph, and then we'll start to work on the code from there. So to be able to make this graph, I'll select this one. It doesn't matter what I am. I guess row 10, that's fine. I'm going to select the data that I want to graph, and then I'll select the labels as well. So I'll hold the control key down, and then select the second range. So I've got I have a discontiguous range selected here. Sometimes if you highlight the text that goes along with these numbers, the graph will build pretty well. This one doesn't really build very well that way, so I'm going to leave the text off. We'll add that as the title of the graph here in just a bit, but I'll just choose Insert. I'll come choose a bar graph, and I'll choose the very first, or column graph. I'll choose the very first column graph. And that makes a pretty nice chart. Now, I would like to get the text of this to be the title of the chart, and maybe we'll actually do that when we're recording it. But that's the chart that we'd like to be able to generate automatically. Questions? Okay, let's go through it one more time, but this time let's record it. So I'm deleting that chart. I've got this, I'm going to go ahead and leave this selected before I start recording. So I've got the area selected that I want, and I'll go ahead and begin recording. So record macro. Macro 1 is a great name for it. And just insert the chart. I think I will go ahead and copy the text and put it into the title so we can see some code for manipulating the title of the chart. And so that looks pretty good. And I'll stop recording. Remember the first time I thought, I'd like to see, how to build a chart. And so it was like 2007, it was Excel 2007. It's kind of the first time we had the ribbon in Excel. And I, recorded just what we did there. Recorded myself building a chart, went to look what it recorded. It recorded nothing. It was like the macro recorder wasn't sophisticated yet enough to do building a chart. But now it is. That's good news. But the code that it generates is not especially clear. So there's a little bit of magic happening here that will be helpful for us to take a look at. So let's take a look at the code that we just generated. So here's show data. This is the code similar to what we built last time we were working in this workbook. Our macro should have generated a new module. So here's module 2. And this then is the code that we executed. So let's talk through it. Let's look at these first 2 lines here to begin. So active sheet, shape. So talk to me in terms of object. What kind of object are we talking about when I say active sheet? What kind of object is this? Okay, so it's a worksheet object. Tell me about shapes. What do you think this is? It's a collection. It's an object, a special kind of object called a collection. It's probably a collection of what? It's shapes. So what's a shape? Shape is anything you can put on top of the worksheet. So shapes don't actually go in a cell. They just sit somewhere on top of the worksheet. You can put lines, that's a shape. You can put a circle, that's a shape. You can put an image, that's a shape. When you put a chart, when you build a chart, it does not put the chart on the worksheet. It puts the chart in a shape, and it puts the shape on the worksheet. Whatever you put on the worksheet is a shape. That's it. Anything you put on the worksheet that's not like in a cell is a shape. Okay, so here's an interesting thing. So we are calling the shape, we are calling a method of the shapes collection. This method is called add chart to. Anyone just get add chart instead of add chart to? Seems like maybe Excel 2013 or 2010 used to record with add chart instead of add chart to. Okay. So presumably the 201 means something. Do I even know what it means? I don't know what it means. Let's see if it can give us some help here. Nope. 201 means something. It's probably some kind of category of what kind of chart it is. Then again, this tells us it's a clustered column chart. Now, what's going on here? What does the dot select mean after? We just added a chart. We call the method called add chart. Should I wear the hat? We don't want the light reflecting off your head. Oh, you should wear the hat every day. Someone tell me what's going on. How can we say add chart dot select? Go ahead. No. Don't want to select. Next line. Next line's not helping us here. But how can we say select? I just want to look at this line right here. So how can we say select after this add chart method? What does that add chart method have to be doing if after we call the method we say select? Yeah, it's creating an object. Right. So it creates the object and it returns a reference to the object. So all the way up to where I say dot select, everything up to here identifies a particular object. What object is it? Okay, so it's really tempting to think, this is the chart that we added. But look at the collection that the method is of. It's a shape. So the shapes collection is saying add chart. Now remember that a shape is what sits on the sheet, and a chart goes inside the shape. So it's creating a shape, and it's creating a chart. They're both different objects. Which one is it returning a reference to? If you had to guess, which one? The shape. Yeah, it's the shapes collection. And so it's going to add a shape, it's going to add a chart, and it's going to return the reference to the shape that it made. And so we are selecting that shape. Now, there's this thing called active chart. So what is that? Well, that is whatever chart is inside the shape that's currently selected. So there's active chart. Now this is really interesting here because this says, we're going to add a chart here, and then we're setting the source data for that chart. And what is it? It's whatever we specified right here. That's great. Okay, so that's setting up the source. The little trick we'll talk about as we get going on this, but there's a question here. Can there be more than one chart in a shape? And I'm pretty sure the answer to that is no. I'm like, if I was laying odds on that, like we're taking bets here, for someone right or wrong on that, I wouldn't yield 100 to 1 odds on that. I might give 2 to 1 odds on that, but I'm pretty sure you don't. I think it's 1 chart per shape. Okay, after that, what did I do? I selected a 10. I came out of cut copy mode. I copied a cell. Is that right? Formula R1C1 equals active cell formula. I changed that. I did not mean to change that, but that's what I did. This is what happened. When I edited this, what did I do? When I went to copy this, I didn't just copy the cell. I edited it, and I went and I copied it out of the formula bar. And so it read that as me changing that cell, updating that cell. So that's what that is. I activated the chart. I selected the title, and then I pasted into the title. But then here we actually get the line that we need. It is the active chart has a chart title, and the chart title has text, and we're putting that into the text property of the chart title. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do. I would like to just take this first line. I'm going to copy this first line, and I'm not going to build this in Module 2. I mean, ultimately, I'm probably going to delete Module 2. I only have 1 subprocedure in Module 1. So I'm going to come back to module 1, and I'll make a sub-procedure here called add chart. And I'm going to put this line in here, I think. Come back to module 2, copy, module 1, and paste. There we go. I've got the first line here. That's delightful. Now, so here's one of the things that's common, and you've noticed this when you've recorded code before, and that is whenever you're working with a worksheet, you've got to select something, and then you've got to do something with what you had selected. And so it ends up being inefficient for a couple of reasons. One, you get a separate line for the select than the line that's actually doing something. And two, it takes some effort to actually select that cell. Why does it take effort to select that cell? It's because it has to update the screen, and updating the screen is an expensive thing to do computationally. We'd prefer not to select this unless we have to. So here's the point. And that is that this whole reference right here is returning a reference to a shape. And then it's selecting it. I don't want to select it. There's no reason to select this. So I'm going to get rid of the select, and let's create a variable. So let me create a variable called just shape, shp, as a shape, shp as shape. And then we will set shp equal to the results of this. This is returning a reference to the shape that it just created. What I'm saying is, instead of selecting it, let me just capture the reference inside the shape variable. So now I can do anything I want to shape. I just have to that shape that's created because I have a handle. I've got a reference to it right here. All right. By this time, we've done this a bunch of times in class, and I'm assuming that you at least go, I think I follow that code, even if this isn't totally comfortable. How many of you are saying, yeah, I follow what you're doing here with this setting the shape equal to it? Okay. How many of you are going, this is still like witchcraft to me. I still don't get this. So no one? Okay. Witchcraft would be a good day for witchcraft. It's Halloween. So that's okay. Okay. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to start off by, I just want to run add chart and see what gets produced at this point. So we have not yet told it what the series is going to be for the chart. But before I do, I'm going to go ahead and delete this one that we have here so far. But let me go ahead and select a particular range to do. So I'm going to select the labels and control click and some other range. Okay, so with that selected, I want to see what happens with add chart while that's selected. All right, so add chart. I'm going to go ahead and run my add chart method. Okay. So what do you notice straight away that's awesome? Yeah, that line that said, hey, let's go ahead and set what the chart series is, that's like totally not, or the data source, that's not necessary, because as long as you've got cells activated, when you build the chart, it goes, oh, you must want the cells that are active here. And so that's the approach that we're going to take. We could go ahead and build this string out by figuring out what's selected, what range is selected. But it's going to be cleaner if we just say build it with the active data. So our next step is to say we're going to choose whichever one the user has selected here, and we're going to select the proper part of the worksheet and then build the chart, and that'll get the data that we want for that selected one. So back over here to the code and module 1. So any thoughts? Help me get going here. How are we going to do this? Some offset from what? Okay, so the active cell is going to provide me some information. What is the active cell going to tell me? Yeah, for what we want to chart, the active cell is going to tell me the row for that. Now, the truth be told, I would be happy if you were here and said build the chart, or here, or here, or here, anywhere on this row. If you said build the chart, I'd go, yeah, I got it. You want the chart on that row. And so let's give ourselves a variable to figure out the row that we're after. So let's dim row as a long integer. And let's just say row equals, someone give me the code. What is it? I want to just figure out what row the active cell is on. Active cell.row. Thank you. Okay, so I now know the row that I need to select this data for. That's pretty good. Now, this is a range. I'm going to have to specify this based on the starting of the starting cell here. Now, what do I know about where this data starts? It always starts in column B. I don't know where the data is going to end. So let's go ahead and build this out with variables. Start call as integer. Dim, and actually we don't really need a start call because we know it's always column 2. Let's just make an end call as integer. Okay, someone speak to me in some hybrid version of VBA in English about how am I going to figure out where the end column is. Go ahead. Okay, so what you're saying is if I'm right here and I do an Excel to right, like Control Shift right arrow, that should be the data that I'm after. Now this works okay as long as I don't have any blank data. And do we know enough about our data to know there's no blank cells? Yeah, we do. I mean, we've looked over this data, there's no blank cells. But if there was blank cells, we've got kind of a little more general solution here. What would that be? Go ahead. Total columns minus 1. So we got to do something to figure this out. And so another approach would be, oh, good. Oh, maybe the last. So someone just says like the active area, but you mean used range. I know that's what you meant. Let me let's talk about used range for a second. I'm not. Whoops. Control G. Question mark active seat. Used range. Oh, I know what we could do. Used range dot address. Okay. Active she. Okay. So that's going to tell us, that's the data. So that's probably pretty good. This will tell us, this is the smallest rectangle that concludes our data. So the last column of this should be the column that we're after. So how would we get after it using this? Well, use range instead of address, let's say cells. This is the collection of all the cells in the used range. And just like we talked about in the project that's due tomorrow, that you can address a range of cells just by a single index. And if I just said, I want to know the 100th cell here, it would just start counting across that used range. It would start in A1, it would count all the way over to F1, and that would be the first 6. That would be the first 6 cells. Where's the 7th cell? 7th cell's A2. It just kind of goes across and it just wraps down. It just counts them all. So what I could do is I could say, well, how many cells are there in my used range? And then just ask for that cell. Which cell used range.cells.count? What number does this tell me? Yeah, that tells me how many cells there are. And so when I plug this number in here as to the cells, that will be the last cell in the range. And so from here, I could just say dot column. And that should give me the column number of the last column of my data. That would work. Works. We just proved it. It works. Let's look at one more way that I'm going to like just a little bit better. Even though I think, I may have some blank data in here, I'm pretty sure we know the states. We know all the states. We don't have any blank states. And remember, there's nothing special about finding the column by looking at this row, right? I just got to know the last column. And so another approach would be to say, let's just look for the last column up here. So assuming that we have at least 2, probably the simplest way, and if we're graphing it, that's not a bad assumption to make. What does a graph of one data item look like? Yeah, it's like a rectangle with no other reference. It's pointless. So we can just start here in B1 and do an AND XL to right, and then ask for the column of that cell. We just go ahead and take a look at it. So range, what do we say, B1? B1 dot end XL to right dot column. Someone talked to me about the difference. So I've got two sets of parentheses here. Someone talked to me about what's different between what's in here and what's in here. Particularly, why do I have quotes around one but not quotes around the other? What's different about what's going on here that one needs quotes and one doesn't? Go ahead. Yeah, there's something special about XL to right. What is the B1? B1 is just a string literal. And when I make a string literal, I've got to put quotes around it. So that's why the quotes are there. So XL right is something different. It's not a method, but what is it? Not an object, not a property. If it was an object or if it was a property, there would be some object dot to get to the property. It's not a variable. It's not a parameter. I haven't heard it yet. Okay, well, in a sense, it's an argument sent to a parameter because it's receiving it. But I mean, anything I put there is the argument. So that's not saying anything about XL to right. What is it? It's a constant. You said almost every other word I taught you except constant. That's pretty good. So it's a constant. Now, someone said variable. Constant's really close to a variable. What's the difference? That's right. Constant, once it gets its value, it stays. You can't change it. And we can create our own constants, but this is a constant that's built in. It's just part of Excel. So it's predefined. It's always available. Here's proof. Let me come here and just print out the constant. It's negative 4,161. This would be exactly the same if I put in here negative 4,161. Wouldn't be so readable, which is the whole reason that we have constants. To make it a little bit more readable to look at. Okay. So that's good. Let's use this line of code to give us our column. So we've got end call, we've got row defined there, end call equals that expression. Of course, the other approach would be to go all the way over to the very last cell in that first row and then come back till we bumped into data. I think this way is fine. All right. So now I think we have all the information we need to know to be able to select what we need selected. So let's go ahead and build ourselves a range that will do this. Range. This is going to be beautiful. I'm going to love this. So first part I want to do is, whatever my active cell was, I want to get this part selected. So I'm going to use the version of this that allows me to give two cell references. So instead of putting in quotes here, I'm going to put in two cells. So the first cell that I want, and I'll make sure that you know what? I think we can assume we're on this sheet because when the person runs this, they're going to be clicking a button that generates the chart. So I'm just going to assume the active sheet, which I think is okay. So range, cells, row number, row, column number, where does it start? Column number 2. So there's my first cell. My second cell is cells, row number, row, column number, and call. Right. We just calculated where this data ends, and we put it in end column. All right, so we're not quite done yet, but this is going to give me, that will refer to that range that I have selected there. The trick here is I got to get that header selected as well. Whew. How can I select two discontiguous ranges? Or how can I select a discontiguous range? Two ranges that are not right next to each other. I think I heard it. Say it louder. Union. Yeah, there's a function called union that will allow me to say, oh, I want to take this range, union it with another range, and that will give me that whole range back. So I've got one of them here. That looks beautiful. I'm going to come here and say, all right, I'm going to make the union, open parenthesis, and I can just do like up to 30 different ranges together to union these. So I'll take the first one. Actually, I make that the second one, so if it goes off the screen, we're okay. And now, here's the other one that I want. This one's pretty easy. Same thing. It's going to be a two-dimensional or a range where I specify two cells. The first cell is going to be B1. And my last cell is going to be row number 2, column number, and call. See, I guess I better go ahead and maximize this so that we can see the whole line. Okay, so this then is going to identify a single range. It's a discontiguous range, but it's one range. And so I should be able to say dot select here. Oops. I was expecting that to work. Range and call. Activator select should work here. What's that? I'm going to kind of break this apart so I can see a little bit better. Let me just put range A1 and set this code aside that I'm cutting out. So that's okay. So I've got, it doesn't like something about this. Oh, I got a range. Oh, I need another closing parenthesis here. Let me print that address. Okay, this one doesn't like, oh, it doesn't know what row is. So let me change this to like 4 and 4. Let's just make sure syntactically we're okay. Range. Cells. It doesn't know what end column is. Okay, so syntactically we're okay there. So let me just undo my code. Back to here. Yeah, and I think what I'm missing here is that I need the closing parenthesis here for the range. There's a closing parenthesis for this cells. Here's the closing parenthesis for the union. I think I'm just missing a closing parenthesis right here. There we go. So this should say, hey, whatever row the active cell is on, let's get the data selected at this point. Ooh, I'm kind of excited to run that. Let me run it. Let's make sure it works. And then we'll go back and take a close look at the code if we need to. Looks good. So it just took my selected cell. It highlighted the right. Oh, wait a minute. No, I just got the states. I didn't get the county names, which I also want here. So that should be a simple change. And let's take a look at it. So instead of ending column here, we're going to end on row 2. So this now will start in B1 and start on row 1, column 2, go to row 2, wherever we end. Okay, how are we doing on this? Let's make sure we got this code working so far. Anyone need help to get this part to work? At this point, the code, when you run it, should generate a pretty good looking chart. Anyone need a hand? I still see a little, some folks that look like they're still working. So let's go ahead and pause and take a look. Okay, so at this point, we're generating a chart. Looks pretty good, except we don't have the chart title. So let's just go ahead and add the chart title. Chart title is pretty easy to get to, so instead of going back to our recorded code, let's just build it. So we've built the shape right here. Now what do you think? Is the chart title going to be a property of the shape or the chart? Yeah, it's probably of the chart. So I've got a shape holding the chart holds the title. So here's what we're going to do. SHP dot, now watch this, chart. So a shape has a chart property, and if the shape holds a chart, the chart property is actually a reference to that chart object. So the chart object is sitting somewhere in memory. The shape property holds the address of where that chart is. So it's just an object variable that we can use to get to the particular chart. I remember the first time I was looking for the title of the chart, I got this far and I said, thank heavens. I hit the dot and it showed me a list. I should be able to find the title. So we just scroll down to title. It's got to be called title, doesn't it? We get down here to the T's. There's only one T. It's tab, so it's not title. Yeah, I looked over this for like a half hour before I got to chart title. It's actually called chart title. So let's go find chart title. There it is, chart title. Wonderful. My next move was to say, great, there's a chart title. Let's just set it equal to something. Whatever we want it to equal, no good. Chart title you hit a dot again, and you find out, oh, chart title is not just a string variable, it's an object itself. And it has a property called text. I think. Yeah, text. Well, let's hit a dot after that one. Who knows? Maybe that's an object too. Ah, nothing comes up. So finally, we found a regular old property. So now we should be able to say that equals something. How are we going to get there? Range on those two cells. Row number what? Row, column number 1. Yeah, it has the title that we're after. And we want the value from that cell. Okay, so now if we run this, it should create a new chart. I'll go ahead and delete this one. Now if we run this, it should create a new chart and should put the title on it. What's our active cell? Oh, we have to make sure we're in an active cell down here. My active cell, I think, was row 1. That would have been a problem. Now we're somewhere down here. It should be the black population estimate from 2008. Here we are in these Alabama counties. Those are the population estimates for that. Oh, and it put the title, just like we're hoping it would do. Ah, that's delightful. What took me an hour to figure out, we did in like a minute. That's pretty good. Questions on the chart title or other questions? Go ahead. Oh, what if there isn't really a title there yet? What version of Excel are you using? Still 2016? Interesting. And you're building the chart with chart 201? I mean, add chart 2 and 201 here? This is all the same? Okay. So the question is, when I run this, or when a student runs this, gets an error that says this chart doesn't have a title. Oh, you had add chart instead of add chart 2. Now that'd be a problem. So let's suppose you're doing add chart and there was no title there. This is how you put the title in. All you have to do is say shape.chart.hasTitle equals true, and that'll give it the title. It'll just put a title in there for you to work with. So if you're really in love with add chart instead of add chart 2, you could do that and it should fix the problem. But we're getting a title there because we're using add chart 2, so we're okay. Other questions? Question here? What if you wanted to add a chart based on a template you save? I'm totally befuddled by the question. I don't even know what you mean by template. Is there such thing as a chart template?
Create a chart, you format it the way you want the format.
Ah, okay, so here's the question. The question is, I just want to put a chart somewhere. Where are you going to save the chart? Like in the Excel workbook somewhere, maybe on a hidden worksheet or something? Ah, okay, so maybe I've got a chart sitting in one of my templates. The truth is, I've never worked with VBA in templates, but my guess is that a template, when you open a workbook, you can kind of open it as a kind of template, and it just makes a copy of that workbook and opens that. You can't access the details of that chart that's in the template or any other workbook unless it's in an open workbook. So you'd have to do something to get that chart open, and then you would say, well, if we're going to create this the same way, we would just have to go read the properties that we're interested in. Maybe we're talking about the colors that are used. We're talking about the width of the chart and so forth. So we just have to read those properties individually off your template and apply them to this one. But I don't think there's an easy way just to say, hey, make this chart like some other chart. You have to go property by property and identify the ones that you want. Alternatively, what you might be able to do is actually copy the chart. I bet if you select that chart, you could copy and then paste it, and then you could change the data that's actually in the chart. So that might be another way to do it if you wanted to go down that road. We're not going to go down that road in class today. Wouldn't mind going down that road if I had a little practice, but I've got a whole YouTube following now, and it would be like, wow, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's muddling his way through this, so can't record that. I've got like 350 YouTube followers now, so feeling pretty good. All right. Okay, so I think that's getting the chart built about like we want it. But what's a big problem? What's the big problem that we're facing in terms of usability at this point? It's right over my data. I don't want to be over my data. That's no good. And so where should we put it? Why don't we put it just barely to the right of the data? So we'd like this one to get created right here. Good news is, it's really easy to change the position of a shape. It's impossible to change the position of a chart. Where's the chart? The chart's wherever the shape is. The chart takes up the whole size of the shape. And you can't move it around inside the shape. That's just, it's going to, you change the size of the shape and the chart goes with it, but you can move the shape. So let's just, how are we going to figure out where that is? So I have a last column. Right? I don't really want it to be here O is in column G because I might have more or fewer columns. I want it to be after my data. So let's do this. Let's give ourselves a variable. Let's declare a variable up here. Let's make a constant. So we talk about constants today. Const, C-O-N-S-T, margin equals, and let's just do this as maybe 10. 10 what you say? I don't know. Just 10. There's some unit. It's not pixels. It's some other unit that Excel uses for keeping track of where things are placed on the screen. How come it's not pixels? It's not pixels because you can zoom in and out of the workbook. And when you're zoomed in, how many pixels is a cell tall? It's a lot more than when you're zoomed out. So pixels isn't what it is, but this is some other measurement. Microsoft had a measurement in the 1990s called TWIPs. I don't even know what it stood for or if it stood for anything. I'm not sure if these are TWIPs or not, but it's some unit. Okay. So we'll have a margin, but let's do this. So we've got our chart built, and now let's just change the position of the shape, SHP. So our shape has a left, it has a top property. So let's set the top equal to our margin. Margin is going to become important once we make the second chart, because when we make the second chart, we're going to want to go below this one, but not right up against it, so the margin will help us for that. Now, how are we going to figure out where it goes with respect to the data? Have we already figured out something that might be helpful to us? Did I hear it? Yeah, we got end column. We know the column the data ends in. So let's set the left. Set the left, SHP dot left equals, I want to get to one of those cells. So let's do cells, row number 1, doesn't really matter what row we're on, column number and call. Now that'll be a reference to a cell. And so now I just want to ask what the left property of that cell is. And this will return a unit, it's not going to return like the column number. It's going to return how many units, how many elements. I'm not even sure what the units are. If they're TWIPs, we'll call them TWIPs. I probably should look that up. It probably isn't too hard to look up, whatever that unit is. But it's going to be on the same scale as our margin. So this isn't quite here. We aren't quite there yet, but we should see that this is positioning the chart somewhere. You know what? While I'm at it, I think I'm going to add a button at this point. So let me go ahead and come to my developer, come to my tools. We'll put a button on here, and we'll use this to be able to build our chart. It's called Add Chart. Wonderful. All right, so now I can maximize this, and we'll be able to see the chart go in. Oh, I probably should. I'll be with your question in just a second. Let me go ahead and put as the caption here. I think I can get to the caption. Add chart. Maybe we'll just call it chart. Click off now. That should make the chart. All right. Hey, it looks pretty good. Yeah, it made the chart. I've got some negative numbers here, so that looks right. But where did it put it? Yeah, it put it to the left of my last column. So what should I do? There's no right property. The cell does not return the right. It does have a left and a width. So I can do the left of that object plus the width of it, but there's a shortcut. What is it? Right, yeah. This gives me the left of the next column over, so +1. And let me also give myself a little margin, plus margin. And I'm looking at 10, thinking 10's a little more than I want, so I'm going to back my margin down to 5. That'll tighten things up a little bit. There was a question back here that I ignored. I created a button. Is the button a shape? That's the question. I mean, I said at the beginning of class, anything that you put onto the sheet is a shape. Even the button? Let's see, how many shapes do we got right here? I should have, if that's true, I should have 1, 2, 3 shapes on this sheet. Let's ask. Active, whoops. Oh, that was a close one. Active. You guys won't believe this, but when I started using computers, there was no undo. If you did something like that, you were starting again. It was terrible. I'm serious. Active cell dot. I don't want active cell. I want active sheet. Active sheet dot shapes dot count. Don't make a liar of me. This should return 3. Oh. Dot shapes, thank you. Dot shapes. Oh, look at that, 3. So yeah, in the collection of shapes, I've got this shape that's holding the chart. I've got this button, which is a shape, and I've got this combo box, which is a shape. Now, the combo box and the button are different than the chart. The button isn't a shape. It's not an object inside the shape. The button is the shape. Okay. So that was the question. We got it? That was an introductory question.
How would I?
Oh, like you want this button to dance around the screen or something. You want to.
I mean, I assume it's part of the collection. Reference any object.
Yep.
How do I know it?
The question is, how do you know the name of the shape? Select the shape and come over here to Format and look around. I don't see it. I was kind of hoping it would be there. Okay, here's how you do it. So we could write a loop, or since there's only 3 of them, why don't we just kind of probe them? It's probably the most recently added one. So shapes number 3 dot name. That's the chart. So let's try shapes number 2. That's the button. Its name is button 4. You don't like that name? You can change it. Just, active sheet dot shapes 2 dot name equals, and give it some other name. Glad to help. Okay, so we've changed this code now to say I want it to go to the left of not the end column, but the next column past. So if the end column is 6, this will be column 7, and then not right on the very bottom, but give myself a little bit of space. That'll give me the margin. Let's go ahead and delete this one. And let's make another chart. That looks pretty good. That put that chart just past my data, wherever it is. I'm going to delete one of these columns. And now I'll add another chart. Let's get rid of this one. And that should figure out where that one is and put it right next to the end of the data. Beautiful. Holy cow, what's going on in Etowah County? What is this? Resident population. Oh, it's just a bigger it's just a bigger county. Okay, back to the code. Questions? So far, so good. All right. Now, of course, the whole idea is we've got lots of data to look at. We don't just want one chart. We're probably going to want, 10 or 20 charts. So, we're going to have to generalize this a little bit. So let's do this. Instead of just writing this directly to top and left, let's give ourselves a couple of variables, and let's just figure out where the top and left is supposed to be. Dim top as a single. So it turns out this margin that we've got here, like where this is positioned, it may or may not be a whole number. It might be 10.3. So we'll want that to be a single precision floating point number. Dim left as single as well. So here's what, let's make this assumption. We could write code that figures this out, but let's make a simplifying assumption, and that is the most recently added shapes to my sheet are going to be charts. This will be a problem if at some point I add some other shape. But it would only be a problem until I delete all the rest of my charts. But the idea is I want to say, listen, if I've already got a chart on this, if there are no charts, this code is perfect already. If I already have a chart, I don't want to put it in that same place. Why not? There's already a chart there. So let's go ahead and first let's adjust our variables to use this top and left. So shape.chart.title, that's okay. Now let's just say our top equals margin, and then we will set our top equal to top, and we'll set our left equal to left. And we'll come up here and say left equals that. All right, but now we want this code to execute conditionally based on how many charts there are. So if there are no charts, oh, you know what? I think there's actually a special collection, now that I think of it, there's a special collection of shapes called chart objects. And the chart object is really a reference to the shape. So that's nice because it's basically just the set of shapes that have charts in them. So let's find out how many charts we have. So let's do ActiveSheet dot chart objects dot count. There's one. Okay, so if we ask how many chart objects there are on the sheet and it's 0, we know we got no charts. Let's go ahead and just do this. But if it's more than 1, we got some work to do. And if it's more than 0, we got some work to do. So let's just say if ActiveSheet dot chart objects dot count is equal to 0, then do this. Else, we'll do something else. So, what do we want to figure out for top and left if it's a different one? If there's already a shape, if there's already one chart, what do we want to set the top and left to? Is this an answer to my question or another question? Oh yeah, char objects. That's like something that happened on the grill last weekend. So this is chart objects. Thank you. Okay, so the first question is, where do we want to put this? Do we want to put this off to the right of our last chart, or do we want to put it down? Yeah, I would say down's a little bit better because we've already got the data coming down, so we're going to be looking up and down, so I think this would be a little better place. But that's still a good idea. So that's good. So I like this. So our left is still going to be the same. We're going to have to change this eventually, but let's go ahead and just duplicate this. But our top is going to be, now, what you're saying is, we just want to go right below whatever that last chart is. I like it. So chart objects, oops, I think I have to say active sheet. I don't think I can just say chart objects. I don't think that will assume the sheet. Let's just find out. Yeah, I've got to tell active sheet. ActiveSheet dot chart objects. Which one do I want? Yeah, I want the last one. Well, fortunately, I already have the count right here. I'll give my last chart object, and I want the top of that plus there's no bottom. So I got to go top plus height. Plus the height plus margin. I don't want it to go right smack up against the bottom. And this is kind of long, so I'm going to break it down into 2 different lines. Underscore. Doesn't read too bad. It's a little lengthy, but so we got the top plus the height plus the margin. And so now, as we add additional charts, they should just line up one right after another. Because each time we we got a problem here. What's the possibility of this ever being 0? Yeah, we're adding it first. We're starting out by saying add a chart. Now, if there are no chart objects, what are we going to do? There's going to be a chart object. So let's see. If chart objects.count is that, yeah, so I think that what we want to do is we want to move set shape equal to this. Let's just move this below where we're setting our top and our left. So we're gonna read the top and the left, then we're going to create the chart. I think this should be okay. We could have adjusted the numbers. If it equals 1, we know there's got to be at least 1, then get the one less than the one we just created, but actually I think that's a little bit better. I think that'll work. If not, we'll come back and tweak it. Should be able to add another chart and just should give me an error. Let's see. active sheet chart objects, active sheet chart objects count top. So let me. Oh, right here, you're saying I've got a misspelling. Yeah, I was going to redo it. Thank you. It would take me a little while to track down, but we would have got it eventually. Oh, active sheet dot chart objects. Active sheet chart object dot count. Oh, I somehow lost my underscore. How'd that go away? Oh, and I lost the plus here. I'm not quite sure how those went away. All right, so let's try that again. Put the chart in the right place. Oh, you know what? I probably was on the wrong cell. So let's put me down here. Let me delete this one. And let's make sure I'm on a cell with data. There we go. So I think I would want to, well, I think what I actually want to do is I probably want to check to make sure if my row is less than 3, then just set it to 3. Okay, let's do that too. So as soon as we calculate what the row is, let's just say if row is less than 3, then row equals 3. That looks pretty good. Now, because I'd like to be able to click several times and have this go one after another, let's do one more thing here. And that is, after we create this, let's just say cells, row number, row plus 1, column number 1, dot select. So after we select that data, we'll create the chart, and then we're just going to select the next row down so that it's really just for convenience here so that I can click that button several times and have the charts get created. Let me delete these charts. I think I'm about to write a procedure that deletes all the charts off the page. So I should be able to chart that one. It selects the next one down, selects the next one down. Pretty nice. I can chart to my heart's content. And I've got all these different charts now built. I like it. What do you want to see? What do you want me to, what part of the code do you want me to go to? I'll pause right here. Okay, so the question is, what is the purpose of these lines here? And the answer is, what we're doing up above here is we are saying, I've got a variable that we've declared at the top called top and left. It's just a location in memory. It's not connected to the chart at all. It's just a place to put a value. And so I'm calculating where I want that to go. And then after I create the chart, I'm using the top where I figured out where I want the top to go. This is what actually moves the chart to that position. So up here, I'm calculating where I want it to go, and here I'm actually telling it to go there. All right, the one more thing that I'd like to do, and I'm not quite sure, I haven't quite thought through exactly how this is going to work, but I don't want to keep going down forever. At some point, I want to bounce over to the right. So, oh, the comment is, maybe Maud will help us here. I actually have an Aunt Maud. She knows nothing about VBA. Yeah. Maud might help us. We could use the count of the charts, and once we got above a certain number, okay. Yeah, let's give that a shot. I like it. So, let's say I want to do it, for how many charts we have here? I don't know how many we have. All right, let's figure this out. Let's suppose I have 3 chart objects. So if I said, take my chart objects mod 3. So let's say I have 4, let's say I have 5 chart objects. Mod 3, that should be 2, yeah? If I had, so that would mean if I'm coming down 3 and then trying to go over, then I've got 2 of these down. I've got room for 1 more to go down. So every time the mod of that is equal to 0, then I've got just that number of charts on there. And when I've got that, then I've got a situation. Okay, I like it. Question? You already thought about all that? So I got about halfway through it and I was lost. Let's try I think the mod is pretty simple. Let's try the mod approach and see if that does it. So right now, what are we saying the left? Right now we're saying the left is right here. You know what? Since we have left being the same on both of these, here's what I want to do. Actually, let's leave the left there on the top. But down here, let's set the left equal to that. Let's do that thing with mod. Okay. If we have more than one, okay, yeah, good. I think this is right. Okay, so now we're going to do something with the mod here. So let's take the count of our chart sheets. So active sheet of our chart shapes. ACTIVE sheet dot chart shapes dot count mod, and let's go ahead and create a constant for this. Chart rows. We'll call it chart rows. If that equals 0, then we've got something going on. So let's come up here and build a constant at the top for chart rows. Chart rows equals 3. So we're saying allow yourself to have three rows of charts, and then go over and start building them more off to the right. So what we're saying is, if there's no chart objects, then just put it all the way at the left. But now we're saying if there's at least one chart object there already, and the number of chart shapes that we have is, okay, if it's 0, then, okay, so here we've got to move over. This means move over. Else, and if. Here, what do we do? This is the same as the last one. Same as last chart. Okay, so that part's easy. Left equals active sheet chart shapes. Where do I have my line of code that? Somewhere I've got code. Oh, here it is. Active sheet chart sheet. Okay, so this is getting me to the last chart. Probably should make a variable called last chart. It's too late now. I've gone too far this way. Left equals the left of my last chart. Right? Okay, so in this case, I've got more than one chart. I've got more than 0 charts. I've got at least one chart. And I'm not in the situation where I have to bump over. So I should just be able to read. It's going to be the same position as the last chart that was created. So left will be the same as the last one. But if it is, mod 0, so that means I already have the number of charts sitting there. My next one has to get pushed over. Left is going to be the left of that last chart plus the width of that last chart plus the margin. I'll go ahead and break that down. Left equals, whoa, something happened here. The left is going to be the left of that chart plus the width. I'm not sure where I got that equal sign in there. Plus the width of that chart plus the margin. That looks pretty good. So I got 3 situations. I have, when there's no charts at all, just make it go past the data. If I've got, if the mod of my chart count is the number of chart rows, So that means I've got the last row is full, the last column is full down to the last row. That's the situation here. I've got to go one further over than my last one. Otherwise, it just goes right below. It goes to the same width as the last one. Go ahead. Here? Oh, yeah, you're right. So, yeah, I started to put this out here. I don't think it's where it belongs. Thank you. So now we're setting the left in these three places. Here, it's just, there's no charts, so put it after the data. Are the two conditions. Oh, boy, that's kind of complex to actually have work the first shot. But we've got 4 minutes, so let's see what we can do. So let's go ahead and run it. I'm going to, oh, you know what? I am going to go ahead and make something that says clear all the charts. Sub clear all charts. Now this seems like a really good option for a for each loop. For each of the chart shapes in my chart shape, just delete them. But the problem is, as soon as I start deleting them out of that collection, it's going to get confused. Because it's going to try to go through all of them, but it's going to delete them in the way. So instead, let's do it this way. Do until active sheet chart objects.count. We're going to keep doing this until the count equals 0. So the count of my chart shapes is 0. And what are we going to do? Chart objects sub 1 dot delete. I think that's how we delete a chart object. If not, we have to delete out of the collection. Let me just see if that deletes all my chart shapes. Oh yeah, so that did the trick. That was probably faster than actually deleting all those charts. So I'm just going to keep looping until we're out of chart shapes, and what we're doing, just delete the first one. Do we still have chart shapes? Yeah, are we out? No, delete the first one. Are we out? No, delete the first one. Are we out? No, delete the first one. Hopefully now we can create 3 charts. Oh. If active sheet chart shapes count, mod, oh, 3. What's the error here? Oh, thank you. This should be chart objects. Chart objects. Okay, third one should go in, and we'll feel good if the next one goes over. Oh. Ah. I got to get the top back up to the top. So when this happens, pushing it over here, we got to say top equals margin. Other than that, we should be okay. Let me just make sure this works. Let me delete all my charts. Looking pretty good. Do I have it outside the loop? Got this one right here. So this needs to be top equals. It's going to take me a little bit more time to track that down. That's my best guess. So let's try that. Then we're going to call it good. Clear those charts. One more time, folks. 1, 2, 3. 3. Oh, look at that. One more. Oh, doing it just like we wanted to do. Okay, let me go ahead and put this code up, and we'll call it good for the day. Have a good Halloween. Have a good and safe Halloween. And remember, project not due tonight, due tomorrow night. Hopefully the TAs will be to help you because I'll be out of town. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.